The canyon wind was warm that morning, but Jack Murphy felt cold the moment he saw the tiny shape behind the rocks. It was not a deer. It was not a coyote. It was a young wild foal, no more than a few months old, stepping into the open like it had been waiting for him. The foal stayed far enough away to run, but it did not run. It followed Jack and his horse like a shadow that would not leave, and Jack could not explain why. Wild horses avoided people. They did not ask for help. This one did. Jack had ridden these Arizona canyons for more than 20 years, and the land still surprised him. Red walls climbed into the sky. Sagebrush clung to dry soil. Hawks circled in the bright blue space above the cliffs. The Double M Ranch spread across miles of rough country, where fences broke, water vanished, and cattle wandered when the grass turned thin. Jack was 55 now, broad-shouldered, quiet, and steady in the saddle. His horse Ranger was a strong quarter horse with dark eyes that seemed to read the world before Jack did. That morning was a normal ride. Jack checked a line of fence, counted cattle near a wash, and wrote notes in the small leather journal he carried in his shirt pocket. His father had kept one. His grandfather had kept one. The pages held weather signs, calf counts, broken posts, and the kind of small details a ranch ran on. Jack believed in doing things the same way every week because routine was the only thing that still felt solid after Linda died. Linda had been gone 3 years. The heart attack came fast like a storm that had no warning. After that, the house felt too big. Supper felt too quiet. Even the ranch felt different, like it had lost its song. Jack still rode the trails, because riding was what he knew how to do when his chest felt too heavy. Ranger had become his silent partner, the one creature that never asked Jack to explain his pain. Ranger sensed the foal before Jack saw it. The horse slowed and lifted his head. His ears snapped forward, his muscles tightened under the saddle. Ranger stopped at the top of a low ridge and would not take another step. Jack leaned in the saddle and stared ahead. At first he saw only rock, dust, and a patch of shade. Then he saw movement. A small brown body eased out from behind a boulder. The foal stood still, legs thin as sticks, head low, ribs showing. Its coat was dull and rough. It looked like the desert had been chewing on it for weeks. Jack's first thought was simple. Where is the mother? A foal that young should have been glued to a mare's side. A wild mare would fight a lion for her baby. She would not leave it behind. Jack waited for the mare to appear, but the only sound was wind and the soft stomp of Ranger's hooves. The foal took a few careful steps closer. It did not bolt. It did not circle wide. It came straight on, like it had picked Jack as its last hope. Jack felt something tighten in his throat. He had seen thirsty cattle. He had seen injured deer. He had seen dogs dumped by cruel people. But this was different, because the foal's eyes did not look wild with fear. They looked desperate and tired, and somehow they looked like they were asking. Jack kept his hands low and spoke to Ranger in a calm voice. He slid down from the saddle slowly, the way you do when you do not want to spook an animal or a horse. Ranger stood quiet, but his body stayed tense. Jack took out his binoculars and looked again. Up close, the truth hit him hard. The foal was too thin. Its belly was tucked. Its lips were dry. Its eyes sat a little deep in its face. It had the look of a creature running out of time. The foal made a soft sound that was not a warning. It was a weak nicker, the kind a baby makes when it is calling for its mother. Hearing it in that empty canyon made Jack's chest ache. The sound pulled at something he tried to keep buried. He stepped closer, stopping every few feet. The foal did not back away. It stood with its legs shaking a little, as if standing was already a hard job. When Jack got near enough to see its neck clearly, his heart thudded. Under the dirt and rough hair was a thin scar that circled the neck. The mark was straight and tight, not the random scrape of brush. It looked like a rope had been there. Jack stared at it and felt his hands turn cold. Wild foals did not get rope marks by accident. Someone had caught this baby. Someone had pulled it away from where it belonged. Jack sat down in the dust, slow and careful, giving the foal space. He did not reach out. He just sat, like he was waiting for the animal to decide. The foal watched him with those dark eyes, then took one more step and stopped again. Jack swallowed hard. The smart thing would be to ride back and call the Bureau of Land Management, report an orphaned foal, and let rules take over. Jack knew those rules were not kind. A baby without its mother did not have many chances in the wild. The law did not always match the heart. He thought of Linda, the way she would pull over for a hurt dog, the way she would pick up lost kittens, the way she would say, "Everything deserves a chance." Jack looked at the foal again. The baby was still watching him, still waiting. "All right," Jack said softly, his voice rough. "I see you." The foal leaned forward and sniffed the air, as if it understood. It made that small, pleading sound again, and Jack felt his eyes burn. He hated that his body still held grief like a loaded gun, ready to fire at the wrong moment. He wiped his face with the back of his hand and kept his head down until the sting passed. Jack stood and walked back to Ranger's saddlebags. He pulled out a canvas tarp, a couple of apples, and his water canteen. He cut the apples into small pieces with his pocket knife, then set them on the ground a few feet from the foal. He poured a little water into his hat and placed it near the apples. The foal hesitated, then stepped in, slow and careful. It ate like it had forgotten what food felt like. It drank with quick, desperate gulps. Jack watched and made a decision he knew could change everything. He could not leave the foal here, not with that rope scar, not with those ribs, not with that look in its eyes. He moved like a man carrying glass. He spread the tarp wide. He used the last apple pieces to coax the foal closer, inch by inch, until the baby's hooves stepped onto the canvas. The foal's legs wobbled, and it sank down, exhausted, as if it had been holding itself up only until help arrived. Jack knelt beside it, careful not to scare it, and felt his throat tighten again. The baby's breath was warm against the desert air. Its ears flicked at every sound, but it did not fight him. "Easy," Jack whispered. "I gotcha." He wrapped the tarp around the foal like a blanket and secured it as best he could behind the saddle, the way you carry a load when you have no other choice. Ranger stepped forward, gentle, as if he knew this was not cattle work. It was something else. The ride back to the ranch felt longer than any ride Jack could remember. Every rock, every dip, every turn made Jack tense. He kept talking low to Ranger, and sometimes he swore he felt the foal shift, alive, still hanging on. When the ranch buildings finally came into view, Jack exhaled a breath he did not know he had been holding. Roberto Santos, his foreman and closest friend, stepped out of the equipment barn and froze when he saw the bundle. "Boss," Roberto called, walking fast. "What in the world is that?" Jack slid down, hands shaking, and started to untie the tarp. "Roberto," he said, voice tight, "I found a baby wild foal up on the ridge." Alone, half dead. Roberto's face changed as the foal's thin body came into view. He took off his hat, and for a second he did not speak. "Dios," Roberto whispered. Jack looked at the rope scar again, and the tears he had pushed down all day came back hard. He covered his mouth with his hand, but it did not help. The truth pressed on him like a weight. This foal had not just been lost, it had been taken. And Jack knew, deep in his bones, that whoever had done it might still be close enough to come back for what they thought belonged to them. Roberto did not ask Jack if they should call someone right away. He saw the foal's ribs, the dull coat, the rope scar, and he understood the same thing Jack did. This was not just a hungry baby that got turned around. This was a baby that had been handled by human hands, then left to die. Roberto's jaw tightened as he looked at the little animal blinking in the sun. "We need shade," Roberto said, "now." They carried the foal together, slow and careful, into the old equipment shed behind the main barn. It smelled like oil, dust, and old leather. Roberto kicked aside boxes and a broken saddle. Jack spread clean straw on the floor, then set an empty grain trough near the wall and filled it with water. He watched the foal's mouth search and tremble as it drank again, like it did not trust that water would stay. Jack drove to town as soon as the foal could stand without falling. He kept looking in the mirror, half sure someone would be behind him on the road. The rope mark on the neck would not leave his mind. In town, he bought milk replacer, soft hay, mineral blocks, and a small bottle for feeding. Mary Peterson at the feed store raised her eyebrows when she saw his cart. "That's a lot of baby feed," she said. Jack forced a calm smile, helping out a neighbor's animal. Mary nodded, but her eyes stayed sharp. In small towns, people watched and remembered. Jack paid and left fast, feeling the heat of gossip already building behind him. Back at the ranch, Roberto had made the shed into something that looked almost gentle. He hung a lantern for light. He rigged a small pen with panels so the foal could move but not wander. He even put a clean blanket folded in the corner like a bed. The foal stood in the straw, ears flicking, eyes wide, trying to decide if this place was safe or another trap. Jack mixed the replacer and warmed it the best he could. When he offered the bottle, the foal did not know what it was at first. Then, hunger took over. The baby latched on and drank with a deep pull that made Jack's chest hurt again. He had raised calves, colts, even a lamb once when he was young. But feeding this wild foal felt like holding a life that was not supposed to be in his hands. Roberto leaned on the panel and watched. "You call the vet yet?" Quote, "Not yet," Jack said. "I wanted it settled first." "You need Dr. Suzanne," Roberto said. "She knows animals, and she knows how to keep her mouth shut." Jack nodded. He waited until evening, then drove to the vet's house instead of calling from the ranch. It was a habit of caution he did not even question now. Dr. Suzanne Coleman met him on her porch. Her hair was tied back, her sleeves rolled up, and she looked like a woman who had seen every kind of trouble a ranch could bring. Jack did not waste words. "I found a wild foal." Orphaned, rope scar on the neck. Her eyes sharpened. "Where is it now?" "In my shed." "You know the rules," she said. "You know what the Bureau will say." Jack swallowed. "I know." Dr. Suzanne studied his face for a long moment. Then she sighed. "I can be there at first light. I am not promising miracles, but I won't let it suffer if we can help it." That night, Jack took the first feeding shift. Roberto offered to do it, but Jack shook his head. He sat on an overturned bucket inside the shed, listening to the ranch settle into quiet. Ranger stood outside, head low, calm, but watchful. Every now and then the foal made a small sound, and Jack would lean forward, ready to act. He found himself talking without meaning to. He told the foal about the canyon trails, about the old spring near the North Ridge, about Linda's laugh that used to fill the kitchen. The words came out soft and plain, like he was talking to a friend who would not judge him for still missing his wife. The foal stepped closer at one point and pressed its nose against Jack's sleeve. The touch was light, but it hit Jack hard. It felt like trust. Jack's eyes burned again. He turned his head and stared at the wall until he could breathe right. He did not want Roberto to see him like this, even though Roberto already knew. Men on ranches learned to hide their soft places. Jack had done it his whole life. But grief and a starving foal had a way of pulling the mask off. By the third day, the foal looked a little better. Not strong, not safe, but better. The eyes were brighter. The legs were steadier. It even began to nibble at the soft hay. Roberto grinned when he saw it. "Look at that," he said. "That baby wants to live." Jack nodded, but the knot in his stomach stayed. Better did not mean solved. Better did not mean legal. Better did not mean safe from whoever had put that rope on the foal's neck. Dr. Suzanne arrived early and did her work without drama. She checked the foal's gums, listened to its heart, felt its legs, and looked long at the rope scar. Her mouth tightened. "That scar is clean," she said. "It was made by a rope, tight and on purpose." Jack's hands curled into fists at his sides. So it was taken. Most likely, she said, roundups happen. People also do things they shouldn't. Some catch wild foals hoping to sell them. Some fail and dump them. Either way, this one was separated from its mother. Roberto asked the question Jack avoided. Can it go back? Dr. Suzanne looked at the foal, then at Jack. A foal this young should be with its mare. That bond is strong. If the mare is alive, she will be searching. Jack felt the shed spin for a second. He pictured the canyon again, the empty land, the way the foal had walked toward him like it was the last door left open. He thought of a wild mare calling into the wind and getting no answer. What do we do? Jack asked, voice low. Dr. Suzanne stayed practical. If you report it, they may take it. They may place it. They may put it down if they decide it won't survive, or is too wild to manage. If you keep it, you risk trouble, big trouble. Roberto let out a breath. So we are trapped either way. Jack stared at the foal. The baby watched him, ears forward, like it already knew his face. Jack had started calling it Salvador in his head. A saver, a survivor. Maybe even a saving for him, though that thought scared him. On the fourth day, trouble came closer. Roberto's teenage daughter, Elena, came by after school to drop off lunch for her father. She heard a baby whinny from inside the shed. Kids were curious by nature, and ranch kids were no different. Elena peeked in, saw the foal, and her eyes went wide. It's so cute, she said, stepping closer before Roberto could stop her. Roberto pulled her back gently. No, Misha, you don't tell anyone about this. Not your friends. Not anybody. Elena's smile faded. Why not? Because people don't know how to keep their mouths shut, Roberto said. And because this is serious. Elena nodded, but Jack saw the struggle in her face. A secret felt heavy in a young person's mouth. It wanted out. 2 days later, Mary Peterson's nephew came to the ranch to deliver feed. He lingered by the barns longer than needed. His eyes drifted toward the shed. He asked too many questions about why Jack was buying milk replacer. When he left, Jack watched his truck vanish down the road and felt the first real wave of fear. That same afternoon, Jack's landline rang. The sound was sharp in the quiet house. Jack picked up. Murphy? A familiar voice answered, calm but tight. Jack, it's Sheriff Tom Bradley. Jack's stomach dropped. Tom was not a man who called just to chat. Tom, Jack said, trying to keep his voice steady. What's going on? Tom paused, then spoke straight. I'm hearing stories. Folks say you brought a wild horse onto your property. They say it's a foal. Jack closed his eyes for a brief moment. The secret had leaked, just like Roberto feared. Tom's voice stayed careful. I'm not calling to threaten you. I'm calling as your friend. But the Bureau is hearing it too. If they come before you do anything, you won't control how this goes. Jack gripped the receiver so hard his knuckles turned white. Tom, I found it dying. I couldn't leave it. I believe you, Tom said. But belief won't stop a report, and it won't stop a federal worker with a clipboard. Jack's throat tightened. He thought of Salvador in the shed, finally drinking without shaking, finally resting without flinching. He thought of those dark eyes that had followed him in the canyon like they were tied to his heart. Tom lowered his voice. I can come out and talk. Off the books for the moment. But Jack, you need a plan. Jack looked out the window at the barns, at the wide land, at the fading light over the red hills. He knew the West could be cruel in a clean, quiet way. It took what it wanted and did not ask permission. Come out, Jack said. Tonight. When Jack hung up, he did not move for a long time. Then he walked to the shed and sat with Salvador in the straw. The foal stepped close and breathed warm air against his hand. Jack rested his palm on the thin neck, right above the rope scar, and the first tear slipped down his cheek before he could stop it. Somewhere out in the canyon lands, a wild mare might still be calling for her baby. And now, men with badges and paperwork were starting to ride toward Jack Murphy's gate. Sheriff Tom Bradley arrived at the ranch just after sundown. His truck rolled slow up the dirt lane, headlights cutting across the pasture. Jack waited at the gate with Ranger tied nearby. The night air carried the smell of dust and dry grass. It should have felt peaceful. Instead, it felt like the world was holding its breath. Tom stepped out and shut his door with care. He was a solid man with graying hair and tired eyes, the kind of sheriff who knew every family story in the county. He shook Jack's hand, but his face stayed serious. "Show me," Tom said. Jack led him past the barn and toward the shed. Inside, the lantern light made warm circles on the straw. Salvador lifted his head the moment Jack entered. The foal stepped forward, ears forward, as if Jack was a safe thing in the room. Tom stared. He did not hide what he felt. "Lord," he whispered. "That's bad." Jack nodded. He was worse in the canyon. Tom walked closer and kept his hands at his sides. "You've been feeding him." "Yes." "You've called Dr. Coleman." "Yes." Tom's eyes dropped to the rope scar. His jaw tightened. Someone caught him. "That's what she said," Jack replied. Tom stepped back and let out a slow breath. "Jack, I get why you did it. I do. But you know how this works." "This is not a stray dog. These horses are managed, protected, and watched. The Bureau will come if the rumor reaches the wrong desk." Jack's voice turned rough. "I could not leave him to die." Tom looked at him like he was weighing the same thing. "I'm not telling you to feel guilty. I'm telling you the law does not care about feelings. If the Bureau decides you are keeping a wild horse, they can make your life hard. Fines. Seizure. Public mess." Jack watched Salvador take a small sip of water. The baby looked better than the day he found it, but still thin, still fragile. Jack felt anger rise in him like heat. "So, what was I supposed to do?" Jack asked. "Call the Bureau and watch them put him down." Tom did not answer right away. His silence was answer enough. Jack's chest tightened. He turned away so Tom would not see his face. He thought of Linda again, her voice in his head, steady and sure. Everything deserves a chance. Tom spoke quietly. "I can buy you time, not much, a few days, maybe a week. But you need to start moving towards something that the Bureau can accept." Jack faced him again. "Like what?" Tom rubbed his jaw. "A licensed facility, a sanctuary, a rescue that works with wild horses. If you show you are trying to place him, it looks less like you are trying to keep him." Roberto stepped into the shed then, boots scraping. He had listened from the doorway, his face tense. "Boss," he said, "I talked to Dr. Coleman. She mentioned a sanctuary in Colorado. They take wild horses. They know the rules." Quote. Jack's stomach twisted at the thought of handing Salvador over to strangers. He had only known the foal for a short time, but the ranch had started to bend around the baby's needs. Feeding shifts. Quiet nights in the shed. The way Salvador came closer when Jack spoke. It filled a place in Jack that had stayed empty since Linda died, and that truth scared him. Tom watched Jack's face. "This is not just a rescue to you anymore," he said gently. Jack did not deny it. He looked at Salvador. The foal stood calm now, breathing slow, trusting the humans around him. Jack felt pride and sorrow at the same time. Roberto kept his voice low. "We can call them tomorrow. Just ask. No promises." Jack nodded once. "Call." The next morning, Dr. Suzanne Coleman made the call with Jack listening in her office. The Wild Horse Sanctuary said they could send an evaluator to see the foal. They asked questions Jack could not answer. Exact location found. Condition on discovery. Any photos. Any marks. Dr. Suzanne mentioned the rope scar, and the voice on the phone went sharp. They agreed to come. Tuesday. For 3 days, Jack lived in a strange mix of hope and dread. Hope that Salvador would have a place where he could live. Dread that a sanctuary visit would draw attention. Dread that the Bureau would show up first. Jack kept feeding Salvador. He kept writing notes in his leather journal, but the entries changed. They were no longer only weather and cattle. They were about a foal's appetite, his steps, his sleep, his trust. On Tuesday morning, a dusty vehicle pulled into the yard. A woman stepped out with a clipboard and a calm, steady way of moving. She introduced herself as Dr. Ree Martin. She had the kind of quiet confidence that came from years of handling wild horses. She walked into the shed and studied Salvador without making him feel trapped. She took photos. She measured. She watched how he moved. She noted how he reacted to Jack. After a long look, she nodded. "He's recovering well," she said. "You've done careful work. He's socialized but still alert. That's good." Jack swallowed. "Can you take him?" "Yes," she said. "We can. He would go to our nursery first, then into a young herd when he's strong. He will have space, care. He will not be sold." Jack felt relief and grief slam into him together. He nodded, but his throat would not work. Dr. Martin looked at the rope scar. "This mark worries me," she said. "It fits illegal capture." Roberto shifted his weight. "So somebody did this." Dr. Martin's eyes stayed serious. "It is possible." She kept writing, and Jack tried to focus on the practical parts. Forms, transport, dates. But then Roberto came running across the yard like he had seen a ghost. "Jack!" he shouted. "North fence, now!" Jack's heart kicked hard. He looked at Dr. Martin. "Stay with Salvador," he said, then ran. He and Roberto rode fast across the pasture. Ranger moved with quick, clean steps, as if he felt Jack's fear. They reached the north fence line, and Jack's breath stopped in his chest. Beyond the fence stood a wild bay mare, tall and powerful, her coat shining even with sweat and dust. Her ribs showed a little, the lean look of an animal that had traveled far without resting. Small cuts marked her legs from brush and rock. Her eyes were wide and fierce, not with fear, but with purpose. The mare lifted her head and called. It was not a random sound. It was a clear, urgent call that went right through Jack like a knife. From the ranch buildings, faint but real, came an answering call. "Salvador." Jack felt the world tilt. "Roberto," he whispered. "That's his mother." The mare paced along the fence like she was searching for a way through. She sniffed the air, then called again, louder. Jack could see her muscles tighten with every step. She was not here by accident. She had tracked her baby to this place. Jack spun Ranger and rode back hard. Dr. Martin met them outside the shed. Her face was already different. She had heard the calls. Salvador was inside the pen, pacing, crying, pushing his nose toward the door like he could smell the canyon on the wind. "That is the mare," Dr. Martin said, voice low. "I have never seen anything like this." Jack nodded fast. She followed him. "Weeks, maybe. She is right at the fence." Dr. Martin's eyes widened, professional focus sharpening. If that is truly the mother and he responds this strongly, a reunion could be possible, but we have to do it right. Jack felt panic. "The Bureau will come." Dr. Martin was already pulling out her notebook. "We document everything. Then we contact them. But Jack, listen to me. The foal is stressed. Keeping them apart could harm him." Roberto's voice cracked. "So we reunite them." Dr. Martin nodded once. "Yes, but safely." The next hour turned into quick action. They opened a larger paddock near the barn. They positioned panels to create space and distance. Dr. Martin called contacts and spoke fast. Roberto called Sheriff Tom. Jack stood with Salvador, hand on the foal's neck, trying to keep him calm. Salvador's eyes were bright with fire now. He was not the weak baby Jack carried in a tarp. He was a foal with one thought in his body. "Mother." Jack opened the gate to the pen. Salvador stepped out like he had been released from a cage. He moved into the paddock, stopped, lifted his head, and called again. The mare was led carefully along the outer fence line by Dr. Martin and Roberto using distance and calm pressure. The mare snorted and stamped, but she did not charge. She kept her eyes locked on the foal. When they finally opened the gate and allowed the mare into the paddock, Jack's heart hammered so hard he thought it would burst. The mare stepped in, head high, ears sharp, body ready to fight. Salvador froze for 1 second, then walked forward with small, quick steps. They met in the middle. First came sniffing, soft sounds, a pause that felt like time stopped. Then the mare made a low sound that Jack felt in his bones, and Salvador rushed in close. The mare pressed her nose along his neck and face, breathing him in, touching him all over like she was counting every part to make sure he was real. Salvador leaned into her like he had been holding himself up for weeks only to reach this moment. Jack's eyes filled before he could stop them. He turned his face away, but the tears came anyway. He had held this baby together with his hands and his heart, and now he was watching the baby return to where it belonged. It was beautiful and it was cruel, because it meant goodbye. Dr. Martin whispered, almost in awe. The bond is intact. The mare began grooming Salvador, nibbling and rubbing the way mothers do. Salvador relaxed under her, then followed her step for step, as if a string had been tied from his chest to hers. Jack stood at the fence, hand gripping the top rail. Roberto came beside him, quiet. "You did it," Roberto said softly. "You kept him alive long enough." Jack could not speak. He watched the mare lower her head to graze, Salvador close at her shoulder. The foal already looked different. More wild. More certain. Like a part of him had clicked back into place. Then vehicles began to arrive. Sheriff Tom rolled in first. Behind him came a bureau truck with a woman in a hard hat. And behind that, a news van that had no business knowing what was happening, except that rumors traveled like fire in dry grass. The bureau woman introduced herself as Patricia Wells. Her eyes moved over the paddock and the 2 horses, then over Jack, then over Dr. Martin. Her voice was firm. "Mr. Murphy," she said, "you have been reported for holding a wild horse without authorization." Jack's jaw clenched. "I found him dying." "I kept him alive." Dr. Martin stepped forward before the bureau woman could push harder. "Ms. Wells, what you are seeing is rare. A foal and mare reunion after separation. This is a conservation success, not a crime." Ms. Wells looked torn between rules and what was in front of her. "They cannot stay here," she said. "They are not staying," Jack replied, voice rough. "The gate is open. They can leave whenever they choose." Ms. Wells looked at the open paddock gate and then at the mare, who stood calm now. Salvador pressed close. The truth was clear. The horses were not trapped. They were choosing safety for the moment. Dr. Martin made a proposal that changed the air. "Let us collar them and track them," she said. "Use this case for research on wild horse family bonds and reunion patterns. Release them back to their range. You get data, the public gets a success story, the horses get their freedom." Ms. Wells hesitated. Tom watched her face, then spoke quietly. "This is the kind of outcome people want to see," he said. "It's also the kind of story that keeps folks from hiding things out of fear." That line mattered. Ms. Wells finally nodded. "If we do this, it is by agreement," she said. "The horses are released to a management area. You contact us immediately in the future. No more private holding." Jack nodded, agreed. The collars were fitted with care. The mare tolerated it for Salvador's sake. Salvador stayed close to her, calm now, like he had no need to fear anything as long as she was there. Late afternoon, the people left one by one. The news van never got the full story. Dr. Martin promised to send updates. Sheriff Tom shook Jack's hand again and held it longer this time, like a friend. When the yard finally went quiet, Jack walked to the fence and stood alone. Salvador drifted near, curious, then reached through the rails and nudged Jack's sleeve the way he had done in the shed. Jack swallowed hard and rubbed the foal's neck one last time. "You're strong now," he whispered. "You're where you belong." The mare watched with calm eyes. No fear, no fight. Almost like she understood. As the sun lowered, the mare turned toward the open land. Salvador followed. They walked out of the paddock. crossed the pasture line, and stepped into the wide country beyond the ranch. At the top of a low hill, Salvador stopped and looked back once. His body was small against the endless land, but his eyes were bright and alive. Jack felt the last tear slip down his cheek. He did not wipe it away. Then Salvador turned and ran to his mother, and together they disappeared into the red hills, wild and free. The wind moved through the canyon like a quiet song, and for the first time in 3 years, Jack Murphy felt something in his chest loosen, like Linda's words had finally come true. Everything deserved a chance.